Thank you, trustee. I appreciate it. We're going to move on to youth center and venue operations. Trustee Namasa.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we just have some proposed field improvements to the sports complex. So I'll pass it to Ken.
Thank you, trustee. So the whole purpose of what I want to present to the board is this is really two-pronged. What you're going to see first is I would call this the short term of what we're looking to do, and I'll give you a review of the existing conditions of the Lansing Sports Complex. And then the second part of this will be presented by Steve and Jeff, and that's more of a long-term vision of what the complex could be. And hopefully the board will be willing to entertain what some of the vision is. We've talked about destination drivers in our village, driving people to Fox Point Ford Hangar and the sports complex. And what you're about to see is hopefully going to improve traffic and improve the conditions of what we have. So. So again, briefly, for those that don't know, our Lansing Sports Complex is located on the north end of town at 16700 Chicago Avenue. We have 4 fields, and we took a lot of time to come up with clever names. This is Field 1, this is Field 2, this is Field 3, and this is Field 4. So we'll see those individually as we work our way through. We also have the old tennis courts that are resurfaced and now used as volleyball courts, in addition to some of the other pieces of property that are at there that you'll hear about from Stephen and Jeff. So, briefly, the property has always been owned by the village. I go back, my old brand goes all the way back to 1978 playing there. The village has always owned me coaching there all the way up through now. It used to be leased to the Lansing Park District in 2017 and was permitted to the Lansing Old Timers Youth Program for obviously the summer programs. That was a different time. There were many more participants in local programs. Travel sports has really infiltrated a lot of our communities and has reduced those numbers. But we're proud to say we still have Lansing programs that are operating at our facilities. The maintenance of the fields was previously handled by the Park District and Lansing Old Timers, and then solely by the Old Timers after the lease with the Park District expired. And due to lack of numbers and lack of ability within the Old Timers to have volunteers, it's no disrespect to them, it's just the way of the world, the village took over maintenance of the venue in 2020. So since 2020, until last year, maintenance was handled by the Public Works Department, both full-time and seasonally. Beginning this past spring, the maintenance was divided into 2 areas you see there. Public Works maintains buildings and cutting of off-field grass and areas outside the fences. My department brought in seasonal help to take care of the infield areas of field preps before and after games. The restrictions on that, however, are what I'm about to show you is we need to be able, we don't have, our manpower cannot do what some of the things we are proposing here, and we need to bring in an outside vendor for that. So all 4 of the fields in some form or fashion have had work done on them since 2020. I would call it sectional work. So certain areas that were in the worst shape or needed repair, but what you're about to see is more of an expansive overhaul of all 4 fields. None of the fields has experienced a real large-scale renovation in many years. And the most recent capital improvements at the complex were back in 2023 when the safety nets between Field 1 and the volleyball courts were put in, as well as the addition and resurfacing of 2 of the volleyball courts. So what is our vision for the future use of the fields? Really 4-pronged. 1, it will always be the home for our Lansing Little League, Lansing Girls Softball, and any travel teams that have a majority of Lansing players on them. Number 2 is a home for practices and games connected with outside travel, baseball and softball programs. There are so many travel teams, those of you with children in that age brackets know, many of them don't have any place to practice or play, they just travel and they go to sites to play games. So that is one possible place that they could come schedule games or schedule practices such as we have had at Field 4 over the last couple of years with the travel softball team. Number 3 is straight rentals, and I refer to these when companies like Perfect Game, as an example, a baseball program, they have huge tournaments, all these travel teams. They can't handle them all at one facility. So in the opening rounds, when you have all these teams playing, they go to various sites. For example, South Suburban College might be the host of the tournament, but games are also played at Kankakee Community College, at local high schools. This is common in the travel sports world until you narrow down and you eliminate down to the weekend when usually the championships are played and then those feed to one site. These are straight rentals where literally cars pull up, the field is prepped, the game is played, it goes into a phone, somebody records it, and away go the vans, and then some other teams show up. It's straight income for us on those rentals. Prep the field, and that's really what our responsibility is. Again, likely Thursdays and Fridays. And then what we really want to do is host our own invitational tournaments on weekends, on any or all of the fields, depending on where the interest will be. So, for example, our vision is not to have 40 teams, 50 teams playing there. We obviously couldn't handle it. But what we'd like to have is smaller tournaments where we bring in the things that you don't see anymore at a lot of these tournaments: announcing, grilling, music playing between innings. Make that more of an experience for these families instead of just pulling up to a lot of these multi-complexes and they just play the games and leave. We want to make that more of a family, I guess I'll call it family-style atmosphere. So our goal, again, to drive outside teams and families to Lansing and provide a home for Lansing youth programs. So you're going to see kind of a pattern here for all 4 fields, kind of an overhead drone shot. This is the big field, the major league field, if you will, Cubs, White Sox size dimensions. For this particular field, this is where, so the proposed improvement cost for this field is $58,000, and you'll see in your package it also is what we're looking to do. For the most part, all of these fields we're talking about rehabbing areas in between third and first base and home plate. We're not talking about anything in the outfield areas or down the lines. One exception to that is field 2, which you'll see in a minute. All of the work we're talking about is contained in the infield areas, and specifically just outside the dugout areas where we have some of our biggest sports. This is likely our most desirable field simply because of the amount of travel teams that play in that 13 to 18-year-old range. We've had a men's league there actually that's played all season long on Sundays and has been a nice addition for us. So on field 1, we're talking about removing the existing turf, as I just showed you, from first base to third base, about 105-foot radius from the mound, hauling, dumping, and all that scrap, laying out a brand new 90-foot radius infield, rebuilding mound and plate areas, you'll see some pictures in a minute, rebuilding bullpen areas, installing new infield sod, and installing sod along first and third base lines. So I'm going to go back for a second. When you see these areas here, what a lot of fields are going to, these baselines, first and third baselines, that are traditionally dirt. A lot of programs that still have regular grass infields are eliminating the dirt and putting grass in these foul lines. What that does is two-pronged. That's less maintenance that you have to do for those games. You don't have, if it does rain, you have a better chance of getting the game in, and you don't get some of the growth that you're going to see, the overgrowth between infield grass and the dirt. It's commonly done in the Midwest, pretty much down to about the Kentucky area and that, before you feed down into the better part of the country where the weather is better. So when you see installing new sod, these foul lines would be replaced and they would be grass instead of dirt. So field 1, one of the issues we have on both of our baseball fields per se is these areas that are around the mound and the plate are too big. They have eroded over the years. The circumference of what those are supposed to be is not anywhere near supposed to be that big. The other thing on our fields, and this goes back a long time, we have this gravel that is outside the dugouts on really all of the fields. It's atrocious. And you can see here some of the weed growth. We have burned it this year. We have done a lot of things that we do to try to eliminate the weed growth. You simply can't do it. And so it is an optic nightmare for us, and it is, again, when these fields were built, That's kind of how it went in. We are looking to eliminate that. So for example, this would become grass. It would no longer be gravel. Here you see on field one, it's hard to tell in a one-dimensional photo, but this is a very low area. You can kind of make it out. So if you stood with your right foot there and your left foot there, you would have probably about a 3-foot difference. And so from a safety perspective, this is what we're looking to get rid of. I hope this doesn't come across as like our field maintenance didn't do their job. Our girls' staff and my staff have busted our butts all year to make them as playable as possible, but it gets outside the scope of what you can handle over an amount of years. This is the back of the infield. You can see this goes up. So when players are going back on a short fly ball or pop-up, and the same thing happens on the girls' field or field 4, you can get a potential trip hazard here. This just is a really bad picture of a really bad bullpen. Field 2, which is the, I call it Little League or the Majors field. I want you to notice on some of these as we look, you see, for those that aren't baseball fans, but you've seen baseball fields, the arc on the back of the infield, kind of a semicircle. Notice when we get to a couple pictures here, you're going to see on some of the fields where that has eroded. So this field this year, I think we've already presented here when you saw the trophy presentation, was the site of the 2025 11U State Little League Tournament. And we had, what was the site? 12 or 13 teams, something like that. Had a nice, and we received a ton of praise. We really, really worked hard to get this field in good shape. But there are some things that need to be done to this field, in my opinion, if we're going to continue to make improvements and draw people there. And mainly that's in the infield grass and areas outside the dugouts. Proposed improvement cost here is $49.70. Again, very similar to what you saw before, just different dimensions. Turf being removed, a 60-foot radius. You see a lot of the same things. The one exception I talked about outfield, there is an area in right field. As was alluded to earlier, our fields pitch toward the Little Cal River, and so there is an area in right center field that is very low, and part of the proposal you have in front of you includes addressing that with a rebuild of that particular area of the outfield. And then the 8-foot warning track, which I'll get to in a minute, is something that is another proposal that we have of us. So in your package, you'll see under field 2 extra items. One is for the outfield area, the other is for the warning track. So you can accuse me of taking the worst pictures to try and make my presentation look better, but these are the pictures. So I can't tell you what this area is. It was fine during the state tournament. And I don't know if there's gremlins or what's underneath there, but it has always been a problem area. A large part of it is water runoff because, again, you have a slope here from the infield going into there. Our pitcher's mound on field 2 obviously does not look very circular. And that's just from time pitchers walking down, getting the ball back. It happens over time, but it definitely needs work. And then this area here, you can see the difference in grade between the infield and the grass. I've taken that picture pretty much at kind of hip high level, but we haven't been on this field really since the state tournament. We put a lot of time and effort into it, but this is what happens and can happen if over time with old fields that are not maintained, not in the season, but are not maintained to keep up the property. So I mentioned the gravel. So you get a look here. This is the first base dugout. This is the first base dugout. This is a large, obnoxiously large gravel area that when we get rain, everything pitches from this direction toward the river, which is over here. So you see what happens. Every time we get like a rain we had this morning, we get this spillover into the dugout at first base. Same thing happens on field 4. You see the trenches. Under this proposal, this would all be grass now. You're not having gravel there anymore, and you're not having to deal with these elements kind of creating, when these harden and we don't rake them out, they become trip hazards that are in play. The home plate area here is obnoxiously too large. This circle is way too big, and as you see in the back, The home plate circle has worked its way back over many, many years, too close to the fence to where we almost can't cut grass back here. And there's a big fall off of ridge, as Trustee Abbasi alluded to, from a catcher going to get a fastball and so forth. Again, very baseball specific things, but they are also safety factors, and one of the reasons that we wanted to bring this to the fore. The warning track I discussed, this is obviously the outfield of that field without a warning track. For those that are not baseball fans, you build an 8-foot, in this case for this size field, an 8-foot track of different material, not grass, so that an outfielder going back starts to realize when they feel something different under their feet that they are about to be near the fence. Some of the tournaments, and we dealt with this year, although they waived it for the state tournament, they won't host if you don't have a warning track. They will tell you that you can't. So again, for tournaments and things, and even from a safety perspective or insurance perspective, this is something we would be proposing as an addition to this particular field. Field 3. Remember I talked about the semicircle not being, this looks like a spade from a deck of cards to me. This field was the last one that was built, and it was kind of built as an add-on field back in for smaller children. This field is probably in what I would say the worst condition as opposed to what it should be. You can see that it is not semicircle at all. And as we move into this, these are where the smallest children play. Our proposal is for $10,400 on this field, used for T-ball and younger players. And where it needs the most attention is in the reshaping I just discussed, and also a remeasuring, which I'll talk about in a minute. The bases are too close to where the grass is, and the players are in the wrong spots when they're standing on the base. So a little simpler here, removing that existing grass turf on both sidelines. So again, when you look at this shot, right in here, our proposal is for this field and field 4, which you'll see in a minute. These grass areas are not needed. Our proposal is to turn this into a completely skinned infield, all dirt. Now you don't have to worry about this grass over here. It's not necessary. If we were going to grass this field, we would grass the entire infield. And we want to get rid of this and make it a completely skinned infield. Much less worry about having to cut that grass, much less maintenance, etc. So here's field 3 from a little closer area. That's the area I just referred to. Again, whenever you have dirt meeting grass, when it's not needed, then you start to get shaping issues. You can also see here that the foul line, this is where the chalk line would go for the foul lines of the game. The grass has overgrown its way into the dirt to where players are running 1 foot on the dirt, 1 foot on the grass. Is that a horrible thing? No, but that's not how it's supposed to be, and you get grade issues. This, as you can see again, these circles are way too big for what the regulation should be. This is, I know this is a small picture, but that's the back of the infield. Has a very similar look to the one I showed you before, where this is uphill. So players are going back and they're moving up. That little red thing is a base plug. You can see how close the base plug is to the grass. There is supposed to be much more room behind there before the grass ever starts. So these need to be reshaped and repositioned, and that curve needs to be reshaped so that it will look more A standard and B will measure up to where the bases are. And finally, field 4, which is, we call the softball field. But again, this is the one where these areas right in here, these grass and gravel areas, are atrocious. They are, in my opinion, the worst. And so the outfield here is great. We put money into the field, put new bullpens in. A couple of years ago, I had talked about some things we did to each field. But this field has 2 major issues. One is, well, again, proposed cost is the exact same, 10.4. It's a very similar dimension to the other one. Right now being used for Lansing Girls Softball and the Elite Royals travel team. And the needs are what I just described, unnecessary grass, gravel, and a regrade on this side of the infield. And that's because when it rains, you get a big runoff from first, heading over toward third and going through this dugout. Always have. So there's the things that we're looking to do, grass and turf being removed, edges removed, the lip. All the fields will get new home plates and base anchors and new mounds that are put in for that, and then the rolling of that after completion is obviously meant to flatten out the grade. So here you can see, I think clearly in a flat picture, you can see how this is uphill. This is shortstop, third base area, players going back. Because we get so much runoff from this to here, we are stabilizing that with a new form of infield mix, which we started using this year, but also getting this regraded and recut. This is a safety hazard. They go uphill and then they come down. Thank you, sir. Here you see the gravel area. This is outside third base. See these small grass patches here? Softball fields don't have grass. By design, they're supposed to be all skid. So over the years, as this is eroded away, it's gotten to be smaller and smaller and much more weed growth. We also want to eliminate, see how this dirt blends into the gravel? That's what happens when it rains. We want it to be all dirt. You see what the spillover is. This is a third base dugout, and everything after a storm runs in there. We now have to scrape this out every time. That's not maximizing what we're trying to do with our field maintenance. And even here, you can see how crooked the foul line is in the grass. This would all be gone. This would all be dirt, which is, if you watch a college softball on TV, that's how you see the fields. You can see the first base line on field 4 very tight to the chalk. And again, the home plate area is too big, the circle is. So getting these back to standard size is what we're looking to do. What are we trying to do? Make the complex a hit. See what they did there? Very example.
Where are you putting this, the Ken Reynolds statue?
That's later in the presentation.
Is that going later?
So we want to improve this facility from the inside out. What do I mean by that? Game fields outward to the other areas that Jeff and Steve will talk about. Teams and programs come first to our facilities for the quality fields. Trustee Abbasi, Administrator Podgorski can both attest to the comments we received about our field when we hosted the state tournament. Yes, we put a lot of time and effort into making it look as good as it could. That's what we should do as always. But that's what they noticed. They didn't notice some of our other boards out there. They noticed where their children were playing their games. That's what they were most interested in. And again, as with Fox Point and the Hangar, we're driving people to venues in Lansing. Creates not only optics for our village, but it also has them eating, dining, shopping in our town, which is one of our bigger goals for all of our venues. This first phase is part of a larger plan, and you're going to hear more on the kind of bigger vision in just a moment. So with that, we didn't even plan this. Those of you that know, when these fields are all hopefully done, we would have our Lansing All-Star Tribute. If you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs Bunny played all the positions? We're doing first base Bugs Bunny. We're doing the same thing. I gotta get closer.
I think so.
So first base would be Chief Coega. Second base would also be Chief Coega.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, shortstop would be, I think you get it. There's Chief Coega. And he and I didn't even talk tonight. How about that?
I'm going to tell you what.
Not only that, you know what? You're also, there you're in left field, and you're in center, and you're also in right. And he's catching, and of course, starting on the mound, that's Chief Coega. So, again, our whole goal with this is that if we're going to have this facility and we're going to keep it the best I can for our own residents and their families, but also the goals we have for bigger vision, it is time that we look about enhancing this property. I'll take any questions that any of you have.
How many phases? You said this is the first phase. There's another phase. How many phases?
If not the fields, so this would be, we're talking the complex. I think you'll see that in a couple minutes. I will tell you that we are in a situation where we have to look at lights, we have to look at fencing, not this year, but that's what I mean by phases. I'm dealing more with from the fences in, and what you're going to hear in a minute is more for the whole, the property development, if that helps.
I just want to comment from my perspective is I'm in a tough spot because as a trustee, I have a fiscal responsibility, and I talk to Ken about this a lot. You've got to see revenue to support investment. I also have a tough position because I'm the Lansing Little League board president and the LLT board president. I will just say, as a user of the fields, Lansing Little League and Lansing Girls Softball, we don't have fields. And we're finding it more and more difficult as leagues to use the Park District fields. We're being met with resistance every season where we don't have fields to use of our own. And so, I appreciate the village's care for these facilities because it does provide our Lansing youth a place to play sports. And I know for Lansing Little League at least, many of these kids are not the ones that are going to be willing to play travel ball. They need rec ball. They need a place to play with their classmates and their friends in the community. And so the sports complex has been home. I really appreciated the investment Ken and his team has put into the fields. But I recognize it's a big ask to put this kind of an investment into the fields because it's kind of one of those field of dreams, if you build it, they'll come. Will they? I hope so. I know I was talking about over the years, the hope is to do more tournaments and more travel ball tournaments and rent out the facilities. And I do know the current state of the fields, it's not going to happen because there's too many options outside of Lansing to rent facilities that are turfed or being invested in. And so it's almost a necessary evil to pour some money back into these fields.
If I can address that, the future is not in this being, the home of Lansing Little League Girls Softball, and that's all that's there. We don't have those numbers anymore as a community. So we're very fortunate to still have rec programs. Those of you with children in those age ranges know a lot of cities don't have it. Just gone. Poof. And I miss those days. I grew up in those days, and I used to be able to have the other social positives that come from having a home field like that. That being said, for us to be able to keep it in the shape we need for our Lansing residents, getting other people to come in and pay rental fees into that. I'm not saying that's going to cover this whole fee right away, but that's how we're going to build back and how we're going to do two things. One, drive more people literally to there, and then two, get that out as a destination driver so that people are spending money, just like at Fox Point in other parts of our town that aren't necessarily there, but they're going into the big city for the community.
Personally, as a parent who has a girl in both Lansing rec ball and a Lansing-based travel team, I would like to see her play at the complex more. She didn't get the opportunity because of some other factors. This year they had to play in Homewood, and our home travel team plays in South Holland. And Gowan's Field is nice, but I feel like the complex could be much better for them. And I'd like to see these improvements be made.
Perhaps Ken, the Cubs could donate. We don't know. We should send a letter. And perhaps the White Sox could donate. We should do crowd fund.
You made me with that one?
I think White Sox would be
Go see the mom is smiling next to you. Those are things that we can reach out for. Those of you that know Curtis Granderson, who was an alumni of our programs and played in the major leagues, the batting cages that are currently there. But it's a perfect example, is that Curtis donated those cages probably 8, 9, 10 years ago. They're at their life expectancy. And so it's a matter of, if we just keep them as they are, eventually they're going to be not safe. And it's already tough on Earl's staff, I can tell you. They're not easy to put up. And so it's a nice enhancement there. But again, we have limited manpower. Part of the goal here is to streamline the services that we can provide as a village and maximize our time in getting it ready and letting a vendor such as Sports Fields, and I should address, they are the kings of this industry. Everybody that knows it's dealt with them, they are the ones. So that's why you do not see 3 bids or anything in front of you. I would be asking the administrator and so forth to waive the bids, because they are the ones that do this. And when they come in, it is a team of people. They come in, it's 25 employees, and they get after it. And I've dealt with them for a long, long time as high school baseball coach and others along the way. But I think it's a perfect example that we can ask for donations, And as we continue to improve it, but like any other property, Fox Point, the hangar, there's going to be that financial commitment that has to be made at some level if you want it to be viable. If not, we'll keep them in the best shape that we can, but the issues that I put before you are going to stay the same because we can't fix those.
And can the sports field take care of one field at a time, or they do everything all at one time?
I've talked with them, it would probably be two phases, but meaning they would probably be able to get some done this fall if approved, and they would be able to finish up this spring.
And there's topic come up in the process for this year, or just anticipated to be like hiking, or how would you pay?
These would be permanent improvements to properties that are within Chicago Avenue tax increment finance district. That's what it's going to come from.
That's what's made this possible, trustee, is the ability. In the past, the old timers did a great job, but they could only go a little bit at a time. This is, again, an overhaul, if you will, to all four fields in the same area. And then that's phase one, making them more marketable to drive people there as we continue to hear the next part that you're about to hear.
Are our fees comparable to like other fees, throughout the?
From a league registration, you mean?
Yeah.
They used to be comically low, which was great when we had great numbers. Now I would say they're competitive, but there aren't a lot of local programs here. There just aren't any. You've got to get out to the 10 leagues in Frankfurt to really get west and start seeing the numbers start that would do it. So yes, I believe the old timers still have a very competitive fee, but it's not those fees that are going to take care of this.
Right.
It's on us.
What about like rentals too then, Ken?
Yeah, the rental fees is where
Are we comparable to,
Yes.
like New Lenox and, Lockport?
My research includes college fields for the bigger fields and the locals. Yes, we are in that lane. If you put us in a 1 to 10, I would say we're a 6, 7 in where we're at in fees, with a 10 being the highest. That's where I see us at.
I was just curious, with us updating these fields, could we, increase, our fees because of, the conditions of the fields being better?
Yes, 100%. 100%. That would be two-pronged. We would look at it from a local, the local level like you and I discussed, and then also outside teams, we can clearly increase rates until we do better.
And I don't want to get rid of the grill master though.
I understand that. Yeah, that's it. I mean, you don't get both cooks like that very often. I will tag team over with your permission, trustee,
Yes.
to Mr. Pintar, and I'm going to go join those two over on that side.
All right. Thank you, trustee. Good evening, everyone. I'll try to make it brief. As Ken mentioned, everything Ken talked about was inside the fences. What I'm going to talk about is outside the fences. If you could picture, I don't know who watched the Cubs-Brewers game last night. Really, all the balls hit by Milwaukee start inside the fence. They end up outside the fence. I think they're three at least. I think they're called home runs. Thanks a lot, buddy. Yep. I got
The Chiefs giving me his gun. Go ahead.
Again, outside of the fence line, we're talking about concept plan, right? It's very similar to what we talked about earlier with the airport. What could be? That's a concept plan, right? What's the vision for what can we do outside of those fence lines? So what do we need to do? We need to examine the existing conditions. What available property do we have? What are our site constraints, right? We've got a river. There's floodplain. What are the site constraints? What are the must-haves? And then what's our wish list, right? Ken did a great job of giving you that vision for what the inside of those fences are going to look like. What do you want the outside of the fences to look like? And then, there's always permitting requirements. Again, that gets into the site constraints as well. So in your packet, I prepared a memo, and then you also have a site plan. I'm sure you can't read because it's very small. So we'll go through it a little bit. As Ken showed this picture earlier, this is the existing conditions. We've got parking spaces right here, paved, about 85 parking spaces. The overflow here, it's a gravel parking lot, right? And I think after that, probably just a free-for-all. That's usually what happens. So how can we improve on that? Also, Ken alluded to a lot of times, not only in the field, but outside the field, a lot of the slopes, when it rains, drains toward the river. We've got some drainage concerns. This red box right here, I think, is the biggest concern for Ken and his staff. It just keeps washing away. How do we make these improvements outside of those fence lines to give everybody a good experience? Ken mentioned we own, the village owns the property. The village owns 19 acres on this site. So it's not just the ball fields, it's not just the volleyball courts, it's the fire training facility, it's the police shooting range, it's that gravel lot. And interestingly enough, there's some weird triangular pieces down here as well. Again, zooming in a little bit, we'll go through this. Some of the property lines are skewed. I don't know why the village owns this and part of the building, but again, when you start a concept plan, what do you own? What are the site constraints? We've got to figure out where are these property lines, these exact property lines, so we can figure out how do we put our vision from paper into practice. So this is the overall concept plan that you have in your packet. I'm going to blow up different areas just so we, oops, I went a little too fast. So just south of the fields now, what could be, from a parking perspective? We talked about travel baseball, we talked about teams coming in. Those kids get dropped off at least an hour ahead of time, right? Coaches want them there. So what about a main driving aisle with a drop-off area, right? It's concept plan. What about a main gate close to the existing concession building? Do we want this to be, a fenced-in property? If you want to do ticketed events, if you want to charge gate fees, right? So you could have a main driving aisle with a drop-off area, with some nice concrete amenities and benches, to a gate with some patio area for picnic tables and things for people to enjoy that grilled concession stand that you guys are very proud of because it's unique, like Ken was talking about. Giving a good experience. From a parking perspective, 85 spots could turn into 225 spots just in this location alone. All these nice landscape medians. We could double up as stormwater management just like we've got at Fox Point. But again, what could be? We want to talk about, again, this is a concept plan. We talked about the baseball monument. This is where the Ken Reynolds statue goes, right?
But Ken's head right there?
So just fun features like that. How can fun features be and amenities be brought into a concept plan like this? More functional, but also for users of the facility. You drop your kids off, you've got an hour to burn, right? How about taking a walk around the whole complex, right? Adding 8-foot multi-use paths, in between all the fields. It would also double up for maintenance purposes, right? Field maintenance, we just heard a lot about it. Once those fields are rebuilt, there's always maintenance that happens. So getting materials from your maintenance shed that's down here all the way over here, be nice to be able to take a gator, drive on these paths, get it there quickly, get out to the bullpen area, maintain that as well. So again, improving the experience for the users. We also talked about maybe putting a top lot, right? A lot of these siblings of users, they don't want to sit, right? They're not going to sit through a 5, 6, 7 inning game. What about a top lot experience for siblings? Again, if we have this all gated off, this is an area that could be safe, secure for the youngsters, siblings of the ball players to play safely with their parents within eyeshot. Again, concepts. Up in the more northwest corner of the complex, we've got to put stormwater management somewhere. So we're trying to find a location that's not going to be utilized, for all the fun amenities. So at the far northwest corner is where we're looking. This is, again, conceptually the size of the pond we need. But could we add another parking area, another 50 spots for volleyball use? So we're not parking, far away southeast to walk, northwest. Is there an opportunity for, some sort of path to the river. I know there's canoe launches, boat launches, things like that. Could that be in the concept? Could there be a multi-use path extending west to the Pensy Greenway? I think there could be, absolutely. If you understand, the opportunities are endless, right? So you've got the police and the fire training facility. What could this look like, right? What do you envision here, right? I'm not kicking you out, chiefs, but eventually, this is part of the whole experience, right? It's part of the whole sports complex. You know, could there be pickleball courts, right? Can you envision that there near the volleyball courts? Basketball courts, soccer fields. You've got enough room for all of this. Some of it, all of it, whatever it takes. Or just keep it open space, right? So again, we're looking at a concept plan. We've looked at this with staff, but we want to get your input. You know, could be tonight. Obviously, you know, call us, work with the administrator, the mayor. You know, we looked at this a couple weeks ago. But these are all things that could happen. So what are we looking at right now? We've got to do our due diligence. What is feasible out here? So what we'd like to do is get authorization to start engineering on 3 separate components of this concept plan and see, can we, you know, bring this to fruition? If we want to expand the sports complex into, you know, ticketed events or travel sports, things of that nature, you know, what does this ultimately look like? So step 1, or area 1, would be the parking area. Area 2 would be the multi-use paths in between the ball fields. And then 3 would be the stormwater management. That's something that's required for any plan. Trustee Smith, you hit the nail on the head earlier. You know, why do this? Why put this concept plan together? Because there's money out there. There's grant funds out there to start implementing your top lot, to start implementing, you know, the amenities in here, your covered shelters. But you have to have a plan, right? You can't just go in and say, hey, I want the money. Do the due diligence. What feasibly can be done here? If you have the plan and you know it will work, more likely to get grant funds in the future for it. You know, there's an OSLAD grant out there. I know we're going to apply for, I believe, next year. That grant in particular, you upload your plans to the website. They want to see, what are you going to do? Because a lot of these grant funds, they want them spent. Once you receive the money, they want you to use it. If you receive the money and you still don't know if you can actually build this, that's not who they're looking to give the money to. They want to know that you can implement your plan. So again, we need to figure out where the property lines are, what's feasible, what does the stormwater management look like, what do the permitting requirements look like. So we want to get started on that process. So what I think we're looking for today is, you know, is this something you want to embark on? Is this something we want to move forward with? You know, take this concept plan and start looking at the feasibility of expanding this parking lot, the feasibility of putting in these paths, and what does, you know, the permitting requirements look like from a stormwater management standpoint. So that's all I've got, but I'll leave this up here so in case you have questions on anything specific. Again, I kind of ran through it a little fast. I know we're getting late, everybody's getting a little sleepy. So, but again.
Investing Cook, you're already seeing, businesses come. Mikowski's is a huge get, a huge win for the village. They're going to do nothing but enhance this area. And again, start thinking in Lansing in terms of, you know, we're driving people here. We have control of our own destiny. We're doing that at Fox Point. We're going to do that here. We're going to do that at the Fort Haven. We have these 3 multi-purpose, multi-use venues that, you know, Lansing can utilize for now and years into the future to keep the town vibrant, to keep it moving, keep young families moving in here and you know, reinvesting. And that's what you know, towns like Lansing and the south suburbs, we're all landlocked. You know, it's all about reinvestment. You know, we don't have 100 acres that you know towns like, you know, New Lenox has to build, you know, 40 fields, but we have to reinvest. So it's reinvest in commercial. That's why you see us, you know, acquiring local facilities and knocking them down and bringing them to new life, new businesses. And we got to do the same thing with village-owned property, create create recreational opportunities for our own residents, to make Lansing a selling point, and then to bring visitors here. You know, one of the teams that was here for the 11U tournament was from Olney. O-L-N-E-Y, I'm trying to say. It's hard for me to Olney. And they stayed at Holiday Inn Express in Lansing. They were here for a week. And that's the kind of development, economic development, the kind of benefits you get when you have fields and you host tournaments, and it's real. You know, we talked to those folks, and we saw the opportunities even when they were only here for those 4 or 5 days. We thought, well, if they were just here for a couple more days, we would have done some piggybacking. We'd have had them out at Fox Point for a Wednesday night show. And that's, you know, you think about the businesses that we have in Lansing that will say, oh, you're bringing in, eight teams for a weekend tournament. Hey, we'll give them a discount if they come to our place. You know, whatever, appetizers, drink specials, and then and then when you have those pre-tournament meetings, when you're going over the ground rules, or even when you're scheduling, you send that information out, and these managers, these coaches, these directors of programs, they push that stuff out to their teams, and you become, hey, yeah, you know what? Let's make sure we get on the Lansing schedule for next year, because our kids had a great time, our parents loved it. That's what we're trying to kill there.
If the board remembers, I reported that week of that tournament, we wanted to invite all the teams to Fox Point. It happened to be the weekend of the Northwest Indiana Symphony. It wasn't a great match for 11U Little League. That was just fate at it.
I just want to say, today I had lunch with a lot of the mayors from the south side. Mayor Don from South Holland, Mayor Rich from Homewood, Mayor Hart from Glenwood. And this is actually what we all talk about. We talked about investing in our communities. And Mayor Don from South Holland was got Gowan Park, and I was telling him about how cool it was back in 1999 when the 12-year-olds went to state. And it was funny because all the kids were like, oh, hey, Coach Hardy, where are we going? And we go to South Holland, guys. But they were like, those fields are amazing. But he said, Mayor Hardy, I have to keep putting money into these to drive people here. And now they got those incubators for, these for entrepreneurs that you're going to start building in South Holland. But what I'm just saying is that you have to invest, in your community. And again, I'm going to, I want to invest in the airport, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't start, taking that first step, you're never, ever going to get it. So again, it's just, like I said, I know this is some concepts, it's about, numbers and what can we afford, but it's about investing, in our communities. And again, truly, if we don't, we're going to get walked all over. So if it's viable, if it falls into, the budget, the board sees it, to build our communities, this is why we're here. You know what I'm saying? We're here to help the youth grow, give back to our residents, by giving them opportunities to, come and have either their children play here, walk there. Pickleball courts, I mean, they're big. I mean, a lot of seniors, play pickleball.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of kids now play soccer. So if we can kind of get this concept, hopefully, in the area that we want to drive it, we're not going to drive people to other communities. We can drive them right down Chicago Ave. So again, I know it's a concept. We need to talk numbers, but this is, like I said, the start of what, we need to do to keep Lansing a great village. So.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Can we put this on the agenda for next meeting?
Yes. Is that all you have, trustee? Thank you. We're going to move on to, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jeff. We're going to move on to public comment.